Hey, welcome to Purple and Bold podcast from Daily News Record, DNR Media. As we get closer and closer to the start of football season, college football season, because it's actually start of high school football season tonight around the Valley. Katie and I will both be out at some high school games, which is a good chance to plug. Coming soon to DNR Media and our podcast channel is Valley Preps with Cody Elliott, John Breeden, and I don't know if they'll have some guests here and there on that one. But yes, we'll be launching another show as we get heavily into football season. Other sports happening, JMU volleyball season starting this weekend as well. But can never talk too much Duke's football on this show. And, Katie continues to get out there just about every day to Bridgeforth Stadium, see different things that she's allowed to see on the field there and talk to different people as just a little over a week away from Liberty visiting Bridgeforth Stadium, another team that hasn't necessarily nailed down a starting quarterback, or at least announced it yet. Some similarities, I guess, when you kind of look at it that way. But let's just get that out of the way because it's the weekly conversation with no official announcement about quarterback position. We'll get that one out of the way early and not even just tease it. Let's just talk about quarterback, where things stand. As we know that they've pretty much narrowed it down to Camden Coleman and JC Evans. Is either one of those two separating themselves at this point?
I've gone a whole week, like I was saying before we started recording, without changing my mind on who I think the starting quarterback is going to be. I said it last week that I think it's JC Evans, and I still think it's JC Evans. We talked with both Camden Coleman and JC earlier this week, and I mean, from a media perspective, can't go wrong with this decision. Both are great talking with the media and kind of what they have to say. But I do think that JC Evans maybe has the edge. And I think this can kind of also lead into the conversation of what we actually see at practice. When I'm watching the quarterbacks, I'm not seeing them. I see them for maybe in teams for about 5 minutes max. That is probably a friendly guess. That's probably closer to like 2 or 3 minutes. So for example, this week on Tuesday, I was out at practice. I was there from 9:35 and then I get kicked out at 10:03. You can only see so much of that when they then practice from about like 9:30 to noon. I only see such a little chunk, and it's mostly drill work and stretching. So I know that there are some people out there wanting more information on what they see in practice. I'm like, well, I can tell you that JC Evans and Camden Coleman both stretch with their team, and then they throw to the wide receivers in drills. So there isn't too much I get to see in terms of them with a starting offense, and the stuff I do see in teams. There's no tackling. It's pretty much they call a play dead if they assume that they would have been tackled in a game. And from there, from what I've seen, I think it's the guys that JC Evans is playing with are people I would assume would be first team offense guys. So I think it's JC Evans right now. May change my mind again, but we've gone a week without me changing my mind.
Yeah, I mean, and then those are the little clues that the outside media are able to get. I mean, we're also still kind of learning just exactly how Billy Napier does things as far as like what he's going to do with his starting quarterback. It would be much more clear if you were able to see like the actual scrimmages, the actual things like that, and see who's taking like reps with what looks like a first team offense. When Bob Chesney was here, we saw basically every quarterback on the roster take snaps with every center on the roster, and you didn't necessarily know what exactly that meant. Even if you could kind of narrow down who the starting offensive line was, they were going to be behind different guys at different times. Curt Cignetti did it a little bit differently. It does seem like maybe, from what you've told me, Billy Napier has at least kind of like let two guys in the center quarterback relationship kind of to start to develop that relationship a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to I guess it was Chesney's first year. I mean, throughout the entire fall, and I think I talked about this a few weeks ago, the entire fall, it seemed like at the point of practice that I was allowed in, it was Dylan Morris taking snaps from Tanner Morris. And so you would have thought then that like Dylan Morris was going to be your starting quarterback, and it was not. It was Alonzo Barnett through the whole fall. It was going on like that. So, right now there are still areas where they'll have like a different center with someone, but I do see JC Evans working a lot with Zach Greenberg, which you would expect is probably something, to keep an eye on what the actual offensive line is going to look like yet right now. Maybe still not completely sure, and they are going to rotate some, but you can imagine that Zach Greenberg is probably not going to be the guy that they're rotating in and out, and it's going to be the guys around him. So the fact that JC Evans does have that relationship right now, I think it's something that, at least to me, is what's pointing to JC maybe leading the quarterback competition right now.
Yeah, and to kind of know for sure that Zach Greenberg is the starting center, like does help as far as deciphering these things. I remember, like you mentioned Chesney's first year. I remember going to practices and being like, okay, wait, is it the quarterback that I don't know, or is it the offensive line that I don't know, like who's who and who's going to start at center, and like because they move it around so much, it took like at least probably a week or two, like to kind of figure out, okay, it doesn't matter who's where right now, and so yeah, I think that's cool. Let's talk a little bit just about we've talked about all the quarterbacks, but if we are right and it is leaning a little towards JC Evans right now, let's just talk about like what we know about him, because it's a little bit of an enigma for a guy who's been in the program as long as he has, for somebody who's seen the field, somebody who has a bowl game MVP on his resume. We've barely seen him throw the ball. We've seen him go deep in a spring game, which was like basically the only play as a spring game. It's kind of crazy how little we've actually seen JC Evans play a traditional quarterback role, but we do know he's got amazing size. He's an amazing athlete. If he can complete passes, I would have to think the ceiling is very high for a guy like that.
Yeah, I would probably say he's maybe has that highest potential of anyone in the quarterback room right now, just from kind of where they are athletically. He has put on a lot of weight, so he is bigger, and he talked about it on Tuesday. He came in to college and he was probably just a little bit over 200 pounds, and he's nearly 6'5". So he's filled out a bit and kind of grown into his frame a little bit. And you notice it when, he's standing around or when he's out on the field, you notice kind of how much bigger he's gotten. And he's talked about making sure he's kept that agility and staying kind of quick on his feet. He said his dad has always told him never get off the jump rope, because it helps keep that agility up. So there are exciting things there. And he has talked about making those strides as a thrower. It's what, the coaching staff has praised him for over the last couple of weeks. They have said they want to see some more consistency out of him. But I think kind of what I've noticed about Napier and how he talks about players in the media, it is almost a little bit more similar to what Curt Cignetti did. And what makes that weird is I think in every other facet, you hear people talk about Billy Napier, and he is much closer to being like Bob Chesney than he is Curt Cignetti. But the one area that he is like Curt Cignetti is he's going to be honest in the media. And he's, it's almost like he's challenging them a little bit and, saying that the quarterback play, was average. I think he wants his players to hear that. He wants someone like JC Evans to hear that and get better. And, you look across this campus, he's not the only coach that does it. I know Shelly Clays with lacrosse will do it too, where she's very honest and saying what she wants out of her team in the media. And because she knows it will, it will get some reaction out of them. And, she's a proven winner. So I think you see Billy Napier doing that. And it's kind of the same approach.
Yeah. And, I also found that average comment like really interesting. Just the time of year that we got it, like, and as we get to know him a little bit better, like, is that like a damning statement? I mean, I think if that came out of the lips of Curt Cignetti, it would be kind of a damning statement, because like he demands perfection essentially, and like not that Billy Napier doesn't, but like does it just mean? Is it a terrible thing for him to say about his guys knowing his personality? Like he'll want better than average by the time they take the field against Liberty, but a couple weeks out, is that a terrible thing to say? Or is it just an honest assessment that like, hey, there's room to improve?
Well, I think it goes down to being what is his definition of average versus someone else? Like, if he has such a high bar, maybe average isn't that bad in his eyes. But it's interesting too when you compare it to what Cam Aiken said too on the same day. And Cam Aiken said he's been happy with kind of the strides that have been taken at quarterback. So it is an interesting balance between, what the head coach is saying and what the offensive coordinator is saying. And if Napier is potentially using it as that little bit of fuel of like, I still need you guys to step up. I still need you guys to work on this consistency and be ready to go by the time we play Liberty in a little bit over a week, because he knows what it's going to take to beat that team.
Yeah. We've talked so much about quarterbacks too. Somebody whose name just keeps coming up. We mentioned him before we started recording, but Smoke Collins of the wide receiver room. Plenty of guys there. Like I think we say 19 wide receivers on the roster. It's a lot. A lot of guys who can do a lot of different things. Guys we've seen on the field before, and Collins is one of those. But it does seem like this has kind of been a breakout camp for him. Just somebody we keep hearing the name. And what has he done so much to stand out?
Well, I think he had a lot of raw potential when he came in, ahead of spring a couple years ago when Chesney was in town. I was really impressed by what he had on film just from kind of some sporadic playing time at Tusculum, and I think that raw potential was really there. But him getting in and having this better understanding of the FBS level and what it kind of takes to stand out and be a wide receiver who can catch the attention of the coaching staff, I think that's really helped him. I think being in at JMU last year, even with the coaching change, has helped him really step up. And, it is a hard room to get noticed in with how many guys are there. But I think he has done well to do that. And I think he has a personality that people really see him there, and he kind of draws some attention in that way too. And he talked about it when he spoke with the media a couple weeks ago of really playing this game with joy, and that has been something that has helped him, because if he pretty much said, like, if you're not having fun, it's, you're doing something wrong. So I think those kind of elements have helped him to where maybe he's not going to be an the starting guy. He's not going to be one of the 2, 3 wide receivers that walks out onto the field for that first play, but he's definitely going to be in the rotation. And I expect him to have several opportunities this fall, because he has shown the ability of not only being a team player, but he can make some pretty spectacular catches when needed.
Yeah, and kind of talking about him like breaking out, but it's not like there was no production from him last year. We saw him get on the field, we saw him make some plays, and do some things. But it just seems like maybe as a guy, we talk about the non-Division I transfers on the roster. Maybe this is a guy who came from that D2 level and was able to produce right away. But we also see the jump and the growth you can have from just 1 year playing at this level.
Yeah, and he, like you said, he got on the field last year and he scored a touchdown against Old Dominion. And he talked about that kind of helping his confidence and knowing that he can do it. And I think it's just kind of spiraled into this year. And I think it's helped him being around guys that were in similar positions, like being around someone like a Corey Scott, who's also making that jump from Division II now to the FBS. I think having some of those similar storylines is definitely only going to help a player like Smoke Collins and in the wide receiver room. But he's definitely just been someone that has really caught the coaching staff's attention. And, I think having talked with Napier multiple times, if you ask him about a player who stands out, it's more, he hasn't necessarily given a lot of names when asked that. He kind of will maybe give a broad answer of, this position group has looked really good, or, I think everyone's taking the steps that they need to take. But for him, this last week to say Smoke Collins and Wyatt Maines, who's on the offensive line, to get 2 players specifically mentioned, I think that is a noticeable thing.
Yeah. Well, for you, anybody else that standing out on either side of the ball? Like, I mean, the quarterbacks and Collins were 2 people we talked about privately, but like, is there anybody else that like just as we get that much closer to game time, they're like, okay, this is a name people really should know?
I think I think there's a lot of people on defense that it's going to be interesting to see kind of how they line them up as the starting group, because I wouldn't necessarily say right now it's one player. I am just curious to see how that secondary really comes together, since it has really gone positionless for them, and the fact that they're just looking specifically to get their 5 best players on the field. That would probably be the area that I'm looking at the most over the next, 7, 8 days, to just kind of see how that organization works out for this team.
Yeah. Um, well, you hinted at it a little bit. Let's just go ahead and have the discussion about like kind of how the sausage made, about what we actually do see in practice as I said, outside media, not employed by JMU in any capacity, things like that. I think there's like sometimes some confusion about like, okay, you were at practice, but you're at the press conference, but you know, when we go, there's a viewing period and then kind of a time out where you're not allowed into the stadium while they do some things that they don't want getting out there. Just I guess just take people through like that typical day and what you do and don't see versus somebody who is employed by JMU but might still be on social media, things like that.
Yeah, you show up, and we kind of show up within like the last couple minutes of everybody wandering out onto the field, getting warmed up a little bit. But then once you're out there, they're doing some drill work. I like watching the offensive line in that time period, and usually this year it means I'm getting yelled at by the two assistants on the offensive line, because they bring energy every day, and they want the other one to be interviewed by the media every single day. So usually there's some back and forth between us there. But from there, it's heavy on the drill work, and kind of the quarterbacks will be taking snaps. They'll, be throwing to some of their wide receivers. Then they'll do some stretching for a while, and then they'll break up again, do some more drill work, and then they'll stretch again, and then they'll break up. And like I said, I'll maybe see like one it's probably like 2 minutes of something resembling a play in a team's scenario, which is about the only chance I have to see, like the quarterback standing behind the offensive line and playing. Um, this week and last week has been heavy. They've really introduced some drills on ball security, which they could have been doing at other points in practice throughout fall camp, and I just wasn't there for it because it wasn't in a time I was allowed in. But that has been the last couple weeks. They've had some more drills that are really putting an emphasis on kind of being in a weird position, but making sure you're holding onto the football. Um, and then maybe some days you'll see a punt and a kick, maybe. That kind of depends on the day too. But yeah, not a lot of times you're seeing them where it is completely offense going against defense. Usually they are, when I'm in practice, it is the offense is on one side of the field and the defense is on the other side of the field.
Yeah, and programs do different things. Like there are some programs who like don't let you come at all. There are programs that have completely open practices. I think it's somewhat notable that JMU, like going back multiple coaches, have operated pretty much the same way, where it's a little time early on, but yeah, like you said, once the defense and offense kind of start going against each other, you got to leave, come back for press conferences. It's been the same for many years through at least a few coaching staffs. Like, as far as I can tell from what previous JMU writers have talked about too. Like I think maybe other than Mickey Matthews, like since then it's been pretty much the same. Mickey had open practices that people could go to like all day if they wanted to, but yeah, like I do find it kind of interesting. JMU has kept that pretty consistent throughout multiple coaching changes. Maybe just coincidence that's how each of these guys likes to do it, but that's kind of where we stand as far as like access compared to some other programs, where I do know, like, yeah, there are programs where, yeah, you can come to practice and watch all day and then not be allowed to say anything or say whatever you want or different things. But that's how it's been done at JMU for quite a while.
Yeah, and I know people like took notice of Kurt Dudley this week. Shout out Kurt, legend right there. Former professor and everything of mine. But Kurt mentioned LeRon Dew's looking really good. That is something honestly to take weight in, because Kurt's not seeing that information from Laurent Dew's going through his drills, which is what I'm seeing. I can tell you, hey, his footwork looks great. When they're doing interception drills, he's catching the ball. Kurt pointing that out, that Laurent Dew's is looking strong and looking good, that is because he can see him in a scrimmage setting. Kurt can be at those scrimmages. So it is something to take weight on, or take weight of, is this person sticking out because Kurt has seen him play in a scrimmage where it is actually a game setting, or an imitation of a game setting. So that is something to take notice of. It's just from outside media, like you said, who's not employed by JMU in any capacity. We are not getting that access. So it's not necessarily something that we are capable of saying because we're not seeing it happen.
Yeah, and let's also make it very clear, Kurt Dudley, Dave Riggert, some of these guys are good friends of ours. We love those guys to death and talk
My
to them all the
favorite
time.
people.
Yeah, but they're in a different situation where Dave, the play-by-play guy who travels with the team and everything, is employed by the radio station, but also approved by JMU. It's a different relationship than what we have. Kurt Dudley not only is a JMU employee, but he also operates like a typical television broadcaster who broadcasts this game. Like, he has similar access to what if Kirk Herbstreit came to JMU to broadcast the game, if he knew that the G6 existed, and came to a game, he would have the same thing, be out there on the field throughout practice, know what he could and couldn't say out loud, but, may hear about a player. But then most of what they gather from that is going to come out during the actual game broadcast. And that's why they're there, to see those things. Whereas, they're a little bit more guarded around us. We're not combative. I don't think any of us have a combative relationship with any current JMU coaches in any sports, but they also know that if there's something that maybe they don't want seen and it's seen or heard or whatever, we have a responsibility to report on some certain things. And so it's just it's a different nature of the jobs and the access and the relationships. And I don't like to talk about us all the time, but I do think every once in a while you kind of got to put it out there, just how the sausage is made and how the job is done, so people kind of understand where the things are coming from.
Yeah, and the point I was trying to make too is if you're an avid listener and you're listening to us and you're listening to the press conferences and you're listening to Dave's interviews, which if you're not listening to Dave's interviews, I highly suggest doing it. I listen to them every single day. But if you hear Kurt Dudley or Dave Riggert say something in these interviews that seems like a hint to what is going on the field, take weight in it, because they are seeing a large section of practice that is closed to other people. So, Kurt was the one that brought up Laurent Dew's at media on Monday. I believe it was Monday. My days are all running together now. And it's almost like for us as outside media members, that's helpful information for me to hear Kurt say these things of hey, this guy has looked really good. And then, even after the press conference, Kurt and I had a conversation about him and kind of what has stood out to him, from seeing him at these scrimmages and where he thinks this young kid can get to. So if you're, like I said, if you're listening to all of these different media outlets and podcasts and interviews, take weight in what Kurt and Dave say, because they do have such a broad knowledge of being able to see this team practice and play practically every single day. And they had those benefits of being at the scrimmage too, because I think, there is a lot of information that probably came out of the scrimmage that we're, as outside media members, not going to get until either Liberty, the game against Liberty, or whatever it was that Napier was willing to talk about in the media after.
Yeah, and also just before we kind of move on with this, point out that Kurt too is there's other teams that their practices are a lot more open for us, and if we show up to volleyball or soccer or one of the basketball teams or lacrosse or any of that, there's a good chance Kurt's there too. He gets around, he sees practices, and it shows through in his broadcasts with the knowledge that he has of every single team on campus. And
I think it's important to note that Kurt Dudley has retired, with air quotes. Has
Yeah,
not.
not not
He's
not that we have to pump up the other
no, I'll pump up Kurt Dudley. That was my best
the other outlets, but you do get your value from your ESPN Plus subscription because you know that he's out there. Like, whatever game JMU Sport you turn on, like you're getting the absolute best information there. So.
The amount of, and I think it's too the amount of times I have seen Kurt at an event. I'm like, oh, are you calling the game today? No, he's not. He's just there. So he's there a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we wrap it up, I know you've got another story on the way that people probably seen it a little bit on social media too. But Patrick Gray, JMU punter, is doing something pretty special this year, something meaningful for him, but it's going to be meaningful for a lot of people. It's going to be a pretty cool story to read in. We'll pump up our publication. Go to dnronline.com and check this one out because it'll be a great story. Tell us what Patrick's doing, and I'm sure he'll talk about it, on his own show. But just tell us, what's going to be happening when he pins the ball inside 20 this year, which JMU punters have been known to do every once in a while.
I think this is a good transition too, because we did pump up both Kurt Dudley and Dave Riggert, so yeah. we'll do it for ourselves too. It was a really special story. It kind of all came together in a really crazy, perfectly timed and aligned way. You mentioned his show with Dave and Morgan Suarez. He had mentioned a couple weeks ago about wearing 11 because it was the age of his sister when she passed away. And so it was one of those things. I had listened to it and it piqued my interest of kind of what happened. And after some searching, I found out that his sister had passed away from DIPG, which is the same brain tumor that the JMU superfan John Paul has, who I wrote about a little bit, I guess about a year and a half ago now. So it was one of those things where I was like, wow, that's a really crazy and sad coincidence because it is a very rare form of cancer. And so I reached out to the communications staff at JMU asking if, to see if Pat would be willing to sit down and talk to me about it. And about at the same time that I texted them, I think it was probably a couple days later, Pat texted the communication staff saying, hey, I really would like some help getting the word out on this initiative that I want to do this year, where every time he and JMU pins a punt inside the 20-yard line, he's going to be donating $100 to the RCD Foundation, which is the Robert Connor Dow's Foundation. And that they operate in both Australia and the US. And it was a foundation that really supported his family while his sister Pippa was going through DIPG. And so it was kind of like this perfect scenario where we were both I was looking to help tell the story and he was looking for someone to tell the story and get the word out there. So it was really great. We sat down on Tuesday after some media and had a nice conversation about his sister Pippa and who she was as a person, but then also kind of how this all came to be. And I don't want to give it all away. I want to encourage people to go read the story online when it's up later today, because I think it's really special and insightful to hear Pat talk about his little sister and how much she has impacted his perspective on life. But there are some cool connections to how it came to be, and it really came together quickly. And a lot of it was having Josh Wells, who was a JMU football alum, coming in and talking to the team, and that kind of got the ball rolling. But it's definitely a story that I think was really neat to hear from him. And I think JMU fans are really going to resonate with it. And it even just from him putting out a link earlier this week about the donations, it seems like it's really caught some people's attention.
Yeah, I mean, it caught my attention too. Like, seeing, because some of those guys are posting stuff all the time. That one jumped out to me like as something special to see, and looking forward to reading that story, and also just looking forward to JMU fans might not be looking forward to seeing him punt a lot, but they will want to see him rake in some money for this thing when he does punt. It's a win-win if you can put it inside the 20 there.
I will say I have seen some funny comments of like people being like, "Man, I really want all of us to go broke donating to the RCD Foundation, but I also don't want to see you on the field." But
Yeah.
it has seemed like a lot of people have gotten on board. I know I've seen some of the families with the Alpha Dog and the Alpha Dogs. They've all said that they're going to match every donation. John Paul's family is matching every donation, and then there are other people that have said, I've seen comments saying like, for every JMU win, they're going to donate X amount of money. So it really does seem exciting that it has picked up some traction, and some JMU fans are really buying in to not only support Pat, but to support his family and other families that have gone through a similar situation.
Man, yeah, you don't want to be the gunner who like gets down there and doesn't keep it from getting in the end zone too. Now at this point, there's a lot of pressure on these guys.
I mean, in his video, he had Jaden Mines there, and I think Jaden Mines is ready to go for his punter and lay it all out there.
Yeah, they may have to make their own donation if like they let one get into the end zone or something. Like it's
maybe.
Yeah. Hey, well, we'll go ahead and wrap this week's episode up. You've been listening to Purple and Bold from DNR Media. Just a little over a week from start of JMU football season. Next week we'll do big Liberty preview, break down the season opener, what to expect, on and off the field as they get ready to take on. We can discuss. Is it a rivalry? When we get into that one, and talk a little bit about what the atmosphere of Bridgeport is going to be like and everything. A full-on Liberty JMU preview next week, so be sure to tune in for that. Also look for Valley Preps coming into the same feed probably within the next week or so with high school football season getting started today. And subscribe, all that stuff, and thanks for tuning in.